If tide goes out, your table's set. If you know all the various
Well, howdy again. Darned if I didn't run out of tape on that other reel. So we'll have to start in, call it reel 1 and reel 2, I guess. Leastwise, if you get tired looking at the other one, you don't need to turn this on. But anyway, there's a few more things that I thought I might cover as a young fellow that I told you I would. So one of the things was when I was about 15, I guess it was, I found a old Indian motorcycle down in the valley that the guy wanted $15 for. So I went down and gosh, took a ride around the block on it. It seemed to run all right. Sure didn't know anything about motorcycles. Rode it home, and sorry to say that was the last ride I ever took on that bike. The thing was so near wore out, I guess it just took that long to finish it up. The cam gears were worn, the case was worn. There was no way I could rebuild that thing. Well, I believe it would have took a whole new engine to do it. So I had that kicking around for a while. Finally, a young guy come along, and he had an old Harley, one of the really old ones. And it was a hard-looking machine, but it run good when you could get it started. The kicker didn't start, so you had to get on a hill and give it a push, and then jam it in gear, and then hope that it started. But at least it was trading good, so I traded in the other one for this Harley. And rode that quite a bit, even though it was hard to start the thing. I was over to my cousin's place one day, and they live about a mile west of our place. And I was heading for home when the throttle wire broke on it. Boy, how am I going to get that on and push it home? So I wired the thing in its wide open position, and I figured when I got to the road, it could come to a T like this, and then our place was right over here. So I just pulled a choke on it, choke it to death. No, that sounded good. So I gave it a push, and gosh, it caught on, and I tell you, I was sailing down the road as fast as I believe I ever went. And it got pretty close to this turnoff down there, and I reached down and pulled the choke, and I tell you, that thing just went faster than it ever did before. So I jumped across that intersection, and we had an orchard in there, and I was going down through this orchard, dodging trees and all, until I finally got it slowed down enough to tip it over on the side there and got it stopped. That was another learning experience that I had. So I had it for a while, and the guy came along one day, and he really wanted that motorcycle. And it wasn't all that great, but he wanted it. And so I says, well, what do you got to trade? He said, well, I got a buckskin horse down there. He said, I'll trade you for that bike. I said, okay, you're on. So I hauled the bike down there and picked up this buckskin horse, which turned out to be a pretty doggone good horse. Used it on the ranch here for a long time. So I came out reasonably good on that deal there. We had a lot of horses in our day there. I had quite a few. One thing my dad always said is that if we can't have a fat horse on the place, then we won't have any. He said, I will not have a skinny horse on the place. And I sure have to look up to him for that. So Dad had a friend one time, and came out to visit us, and I guess he seen I was interested in horses, so he said, I got a little horse down there, he said, I'd like to give you if you just come and get it. Well, sure, always do that. So I went down there, and I tell you, that was the scrawniest little white horse you could ever imagine. I mean, his ribs were showing. Of course, I'd already agreed to take him, so there was no way out. So when I brought him in on the place, and Dad looked at him, he took one look, and he said, oh boy. He said, I'll give you just 30 days to fatten that horse up. If he ain't fat, he said, he's out of here. Well, there was no way in 30 days, 60, 90, or 190 could ever fatten that little horse up. So he didn't take long till he was down the road. My dad come home one day and told me, he says, fellow down on Trentwood, old John Myers has got a horse down there. He said, he's an 8-year-old gelding. He never had nothing done on him but a halter. He just knows how to lead. He's never been broke, never been taught anything. And he says, old John wanted to know if I'd break that horse to harness for him. He said he'd give us $45 if we'd do it. He says, what do you think? $45, that's quite a lot of money. He says, I can't see any reason why we can't do it. He says, let's go get him. So we went down and we picked up this big old gray horse, big old lanky thing there, you know, and brought him home. He come along good. So normally I would start a horse out easy, you know, a little groundwork and training and so forth, but we didn't have time for that, so I threw the harness onto him and hitched him up alongside old Bird, that sorrel mare that I told you about before, that real good horse. She was good at handling young horses there. So we hitched him up alongside her, rigged them all out, and I had a front bob sled there, just the front bobs on it. So I hitched him up to that front bob. And it was summertime, so it would be hard dragging. Well, I'll tell you, when that boy hit the collar on that thing, I mean, he literally exploded. And he took me down through the orchard there, and I was dodging trees and trying to get him stopped. And I mean, that guy was a powerhouse. And we kept going until he just finally kind of played out, you know. But the funny part was, when he got stopped, I finally got him stopped there. This old mare, old Bird, just reached over and got him right behind the ears and clamped down on him and just shook the living hell out of him. I don't think she's ever going to quit. She brought him right down onto his knees, by guys. And that's the last time that we had any problems with that horse there. We picked him up and worked him all summer in the string there. And he worked out fine. And just that one lesson's all it took. She was a great horse, that old Bird was. But like I told you before, she went through a lot of mates. And she was still going years after that. I can remember one time as she was a young horse, she ran away from home, went down to my uncle's place down there, I guess to be with his horses or whatever. And my mother went down to get her. And I was just a little kid at the time. I couldn't believe it. My mother came back with that old mare strapped onto the halter chain there and leading her. And she was fighting her all the way home. She was just running circles around her. And I tell you, it did not faze my mother one damn bit. She just brought that old mare home, put her in the corral, and that was the end of that. But I got to tell you, my mother was really a hand with animals. She loved animals, any kind of animal. She nursed more orphans back to life. Like I'll give you, for instance, had a sow one time that had piglets and had more piglets than she had nipples to feed, or faucets to feed it, I guess I should say. So there was one little runt that came out of the bunch. And he was doomed to die because he just couldn't get any milk. So my mother reached in and got him, and she bottle fed that thing and raised him up there. He got to be pretty good sized hog, you know. He had to run to the place. He wasn't in any corral. He'd come up on the front porch, and we had a goat on the place. I can't remember how we got that goat, but that goat delighted in teasing that pig. The goat would run up, butt him in the butt, and then run away from him, and the pig would turn around. Of course, you can never catch that goat. But one day, that pig was on the porch. My mother was sweeping the house out, and she put her broom against that pig to push him off the porch, and he turned on her. And well, I tell you, she got that door shut on him, and she told Dad, said, that pig has got to go. Said, he just got to the point now where he's mean. That damn goat just made him mean. So he went down the road to market, I guess it was, or butcher or whatever. So we were stuck with that goat. And that damn goat caused more problems than you could shake a stick at. He would climb up on everything. And on Dad's Oldsmobile Touring, that goat climbed up on the fenders, on the hood, and up onto that rag top, tore the top in two and down inside. And of course, Dad was going to kill him for that. Mother come to its rescue. So the goat lived on there for a while. Finally, one day, Dad had a truck loaded up with a load of hogs he was taking to the market. And so while he had the truck parked there all loaded up, he came in to wash up, clean up a little bit before he started. And somewhere or another, that damn goat jumped up on the fender, the hood, the cab of the truck, on the inside with those pigs in there. Dad started for town. Dad said he never knew that goat was in there when he left. I kind of questioned that. But he never brought the goat back. We never saw the goat again. I don't know what happened to that goat. But getting back to the horses again now, I'll relay a little incident to you that was a real learning experience for me. As just a young little kid, I wanted to drive those horses, work them. So one day, Dad fixed up one horse and a one-section harrow, about that way. And he started me out harrowing the field that he was plowing. So, boy, I tell you, I'm stepping along there, and I'm just thinking I'm doing a great job here. I get clear around this 60-acre field, and I come back, and I looked at that thing, and it's going to take me a week to get this field done. So Dad came along, and he was harrowing with 4 horses and I think 4 sections of harrow. Man, he was cutting a swath across there, really doing good at it. So I come in, Dad, let me drive that team. Let me harrow here. Let me do this. He said, no. He said, you stick with the other. No, Dad, let me take these horses here. So probably against his better judgment, he let me take them. And I was farming. I was cutting this wide swath there, harrowing this plowed field and going real good. Till I got to the end where I was to turn around. And there was where I found out you cannot turn 4 horses where you can turn 1. But I tried. And I tell you, those horses, they turned all right, but the britchins was up over their hips. The double trees was all upset. The harrows were setting upside down. It looked like a wreck out there. And all I could do was stand there and look back out and, Dad. Well, Dad being older and smarter and wiser than me, I suppose kind of figured that maybe something like that would happen. So he climbed up on the hill where he could look and watch as I went down there. And so he was laying up there looking down there. So finally he came down. And he says, see, I told you weren't ready for this. But yeah, but Dad, what can we do? Well, we're going to take everything apart, get it all straightened out, and hitched up and ready to go again. And Dad said, I'll take him. No, Dad, I know what to do now. I won't do that again. So he said, well, okay. So I started around there, and guess where I made the next turn? Halfway out in the middle of the field. But that's I guess the way you learn to do things, the experiences you learn, and so forth. But always did like good horses. Always liked to have good horses. I really liked to match up teams. Nothing I liked better than a good team that stepped out there. You didn't have to have starch in the lines to keep them going. Same thing with saddle horses. I've had a lot of saddle horses. And just about all of them were exceptional horses. I figured if I was going to ride a horse, I wanted to ride a good one. And I liked the horse that was up on the reins. She didn't have to push him along there. I like to have a horse that you could ride down the road and somebody see him and turn back and take a second look at him. I kind of like the horse that had a little spirit to him. That, was a good-looking horse that handled himself well. And I think I still like a darn good horse. Like the last little horse that I had was a purebred Arabian. And I know quarter horse people don't take kindly to Arabians. And I think I finally found out what the answer was. This was my first Arab. Certainly wouldn't be my last. I learned the Arab, at least the one I had learned quicker and retained it longer than any quarter or Morgan or anything else that I've ever had, and I appreciated that. But I also learned that you have to work with an Arab, not against it. And this last one that I had there, I bought him, and he had been a show horse. He had ribbons and stuff galore. So when I got him, my type of riding was, of course, completely different from what he was ever used to. And a lot of times he would question me a little bit on what I'd ask him to do, but he never refused to, and I never put him into any predicaments where he had any doubt to it. I remember the lady who I bought him from said, one thing I got to tell you, he will not cross water, which I guess is a kind of a trait with Arabs. I said, that's no problem. She said, well, I want you to know it. I said, no problem at all. So I hadn't had him for 3 or 4 days. We was riding up here, and I come to a pretty good sized puddle up there. That's the last time they said he wouldn't go through water, because he did. He went through water. It's just a matter, I don't say I'm the greatest horse trainer in the world, because I'm not. But I try to think like him and try to remember what's bothering him and why he didn't want to do that. And I just worked with him very calmly. And first he got one foot in, then another, and then on through there. And from then on, it wasn't any problem. In fact, I was up to Montana one year with Jim, my other son, up there, and had a back string. And four of my boys and another fellow went. We packed back up into the wilderness mountains out of Darby, Montana. And that was the first time that this horse of mine had been back in the mountains. I pulled a pack horse along with him there. We crossed that Tin Cup River, I think, 8 times as many. Not standing my stirrups would drag water. But he would do everything, so I have nothing to say bad about the Arabs. In fact, my next one, if I could find the one I like, would probably be another Arab. I like the way they do. I like the way they work. I like the way he learned things. And by giving him a fair shake, he would do what I wanted him to do. So I just don't have anything bad to say about it. I think I learned early in my life, way back when I was a younger guy, I was riding a little mare one time, and I was looking for cattle that were out, and it came dark on me. It was back up in the hills, so to speak. And so it got absolutely dark, and I thought I knew where I was. So I pushed this little mare, which I thought was a trail, laid down off this high country down into the lower there. And she didn't want to go. So I forced her to go, which I shouldn't have done. And when we ended up, we had come down there about 20 feet almost straight down there, slipping and sliding over this rocks. And ended up in the bottom. Fortunately, neither one of us got hurt. The next day, I rode back up to see what I'd done. And I had pushed her off. I'm almost over a cliff there, damn near straight up and down. Because I had missed the turn, or the path that I thought that we were on. And that's when I thought, from here on, whenever a horse doesn't want to do anything, I'm going to find out why. What the reason is, because sure, they do have a reason on what they do, and then I've always learned that if I respect their thinkings on things that I can usually work around them and come out and we're both okay. The horse gets out all right out of the deal, without any problem like that. But getting back to motorcycles again, I had a few Harleys in my day. In my younger years there, I kind of wished I had one of them, two of them back. I had an old 32 Harley 74 that was a going machine. I'd like to have it back, but I don't have it. I know I'll never have it now. At one time you could get Harleys for a song even if you couldn't sing. But they went like the Corvettes. It almost took off one day, and any kind of a Harley is worth a figure right now. You can't buy anything. Like, when my kids were getting up to the age, one of them said to me, forget which one it was now, Tom, John, or Tim, said, Dad, what would you say about getting a motorcycle? Great, I'll get one too. So I did, and kids learned how to ride. So we had motorcycles. In fact, a couple of years ago, I didn't have a horse in the barn, but I had 10 motorcycles in there. My kids, my friends, and all. I have two good ones that I have right now. One is a 750 Honda Sabre, which is a road machine. And my backcountry bike is a NX 250 Honda, which is my off-road machine. And it's a good bike. It's got that little button that says start on it, which eliminates all that kicking. And I kind of get a kick out of my kids, they are always after me because I don't think somebody riding with me. Well, how many guys that's my age that are out riding backcountry on a motorcycle? Hardly any. So my riding buddies are all in the workforce working during the week, so I don't have hardly any choice. One time I was up on Mount Spokane. I was back in there, and that's pretty high country. It's big country when you get back in there. I didn't realize till I started riding the trails up there. So I was back in there about 13 miles one afternoon. And I was coming around a little bend in the road there. I'm sure I was probably in either the first or second gear, just putting along there. Coming back out, I rode down 16 miles. I was on my way back to my truck. I came around this little kind of horseshoe turn there. I really don't know to this day what the hell happened there. But the next thing I knew, I was standing on the bank, and my bike was way down this steep bank there, almost in a creek. I'm the only one up there. There isn't anybody else up there but me. And I'm 13 miles from my truck. No chance to get that bike up out of that side hill there. So what do? You either start walking or you sit down and cry. And it wouldn't do any good to cry. So at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so I started hooking it out of there. And I thought, there's lots of game up in that car. There's moose and elk, deer, a lot of bear up in there. Cougars, even bobcats. I thought, boy, on the way back, because a lot of switchbacks all the way out. You come around this bend here, you can see this whole side of the country. And I thought, doggone it, I bet I'll see something on the way out. I should see some deer because the tracks all over the roads up there. So I started out, and the first 10 miles I made without stopping. Just trucking right along there, and everything was going great. And then I knew where the 3-mile marker was. And I got to that 3-mile marker, and I sat down, rested a little bit. I tell you, I can't believe it, but my hips were just damn near killing me there, I had my riding boots on, and my socks from the sweat got like sandpaper. Were just rubbing my feet there, and they were getting hurt. So the last 3 miles, I didn't know if I was going to make it or not. I was hurting that damn bad. But I kept on, and I finally got home. I think it was like 8 or 9 o'clock that night. I barely could get in the house from the truck from hurting so bad. But the next morning, got up, got the block and tackle and cables, so forth, and went up there and got hold of that. Used my truck, snaked that bike up out of there. And even if I'd had 2 or 3 guys up there, we could never got that bike up. So anyway, that's why they're always after me not to ride alone. And I don't usually, but sometimes I take it. We do a lot of bike riding. My boys, my friends, got a bike trailer and usually tow the bike back up, get off the main roads and find some back country to go on. I got some Forest Service roads. I like to ride back up in there and see what's on the other side of the hill. Right up to some of these fire lookout towers that aren't manned anymore, but they're still up there. I like to do this. Well, I'm 80 years old this year, and I'm still riding in bikes and horses and still enjoying every damn minute of it. But that's part of it. Even my daughter, Connie, got into riding motorcycles. She even got my Goldwing away from me and rode that for ever so long there. A real good rider, too. I don't know how she handled that big machine, because she ain't a very big girl. But she did. So anyway, we kind of was a motorcycle family, I guess you might say. But I've kind of gotten away from my things I did in my childhood there. One thing leads to another. Oh, I got one experience I got to tell you about. You've heard of a couple of my bull experiences. Well, I don't know. I would hate to decide now whether I would like to tangle with a bull or an old range cow with a calf. My son Jim was working down here on a stock ranch one year, and I don't know how he did it, but somehow or other he came home with 3 head of stock that he had acquired while he was working. And he pulled in here, and it was just not dark. I said, Jim, what are you going to do with them? Well, he says, there's a fair enough on middle beyond his pasture. He says, I'm going to put them up there. Well, you're not going to unload them tonight up there in the pasture. He said, oh, yeah. I said, no problem. You better not do that. I said, those buggers, I said, you kick them out of that truck and their tail's going to go up over them. And I said, they're going to run until they run themselves out. Fences and nothing. Oh, Dad, I don't think they'll do that. Well, I guess they will. You better see if a farmer doesn't have a corral you can put them in. Just feed them up and water them tonight there. Oh, I said, you worry too much. All right, you go ahead. So he got up there to Farron's place. Unloaded him. When he came back here, he said, I guess your dad, you know what you're talking about. He says, well, man, Farron told me the same exact thing as you did. So he says, I put him into a corral. So turn him out tomorrow. So that was in the late fall, I guess. In the springtime, I got a call here one Sunday afternoon. Mr. Farron was on the line. He says, Jim there? I said, no, he isn't. He said, when will he be back? I said, well, probably this evening. I said, he's out for the day doing whatever. I said, is there a problem or something? He says, well, he said, that Charlie heifer looks to me like she dropped a calf up there in the middle of the field. And it was raining. Oh, I mean, it was raining, that spring cold rain. He says, it just looks like a little bundle of white up. I said, I'll be right up. So I got my rig truck and I rode up there, He went with me and we walked out there. Well, we didn't get very close to that contact. Yeah, that's going to be a problem. There's trouble with a capital T. And she was upon the ground and blowing snot, and her eyes was gutted as big as a cup, there. So Farron says, well, I'm not going in there. Well, I don't blame him. I said, have you got a hay fork handle in the barn down there? Not a fork on, just a bare handle. Yeah, he says, I got it. Would you bring that up to me? And I said, if you got an old horse blanket or something, I can put that cap on. He said, you going in there and get that cap? Oh, yeah. Oh, boy, he said, I don't think you get it. So I said, I will. So he brought me a big tarp or a horse blanket, I guess, something. And I started in there with this. And, well, I'll tell you, that old cow, the closer I got, the madder she got. So pretty soon, here she comes. She jumped that cap and she came at me. with her head down, and she was going to take me right there. So I dropped the blanket in front of me there, and I stood there kind of like a damn baseball player, you know. And when she got up almost to me, I stepped back a step, and I came down, and I caught her right across the nose with that fork handle there. And she throwed her head around, you know, and she run back to the calf. And so I picked up the blanket, and I started on again. And boy, I was lucky. So I got a little further up, and by George, she came again. Just tight down at me there. So I done the same thing, and I don't know, I could be lucky the second time, but I did, and I cracked her still across the nose. I drew blood on her that time, nose spitting blood out. So she run back behind the calf. Anybody ever tells you keep that calf between you and that cow and she won't bother you, don't believe it. It's not so. So I started to pick the blanket up again, and I walked towards the calf. Of course, she was standing there just ready to go, you know. Finally, she did. She jumped, the calf came out to the third time. And this time, I really got, I mean, it sounded like a rifle shot there, and I hated to do it. But that one just about downed her there. It drew blood. She was blowing blood and froth all over the place there, and shaking her head, you know, there. And she went back behind the calf again and stood there. Oh, boy, I wonder what's going to come of this. So I kept aging up there, and I was going to put the calf on the blanket and pick it up and carry it on my shoulder. But I changed my mind on that. Well, I got up to that calf, and I kneeled down there and worked that calf onto that blanket with one hand while I stood there with my eye on her all the time, because she could have mangled me there if she'd wanted to, you know. But she didn't. She stood there, you know, and I rolled this calf onto this blanket, and I started dragging that calf then all the way down to the barn, and it was soft and wet, you know, and cold and shivering. Pretty little white thing, you know. Charlie got big ears, you know, there. It looked more like a rabbit up there than a calf. So I dragged that calf clear down to the barn, and he had a box stall in there. So I dragged it through the gates and up into this box stall, and when I went to the barn there, I picked up a flake of hay. So when I got inside the stall there, I flipped her this flake of hay, and she started munching on that hay there. And I got a gunny sack, and I went after that little calf, and I rubbed it dry and got him warmed up, you know, and got him up on her legs, little heifer calf. Put her up to the faucets, and she started nursing, and then everything was okay. But had I not done that, that calf would have perished out there on that field there. She would just have some frozen. So that was another experience of mine with an old range cow. Like I say, they can be just as bad as a damn bull, especially if they're a first calf heifer and you get in there and they think you're bothering you. Just another one of my experiences that I've had in this lifetime. I probably would, you know, could think of a lot of others, but I don't know. One thing leads to another and so forth. But anyway, getting back to farm there, like the stock market crashed in 29 and the depression came on in the 30s. And it absolutely just seemed like we were never going to get anywhere or do anything. There was no light at the end of the tunnel. Every year was worse than the last. We were better than a lot of people. We raised our stuff, so we weren't starving. But in the Spokane, and not only Spokane, other cities, there were long soup lines of feeding these hungry people. You know, that didn't have anything there. It was a terrible time. And I guess I always still carry that worry in my mind. If we ever go back to that again, it would be a terrible, terrible thing. I hope we never do it. They say we won't, but I wouldn't bet on it, having gone through it. But anyway, after about 4 years of that, some guy approached my dad to go into logging. And he said he had right of way to this timber that belonged to the Deer Park Pine. And he would give us the right of way and went logging. So Dad decided that's what you're going to do. And I kind of fought against it, which I had a habit of doing on things I couldn't see my way clear through. And Dad used to say I could throw more wet blankets on these plans than anybody ever knew. So I talked it over with my mother one day, and she said, well, if Dad thinks that's what we got to do, then we got to go with him. So we started it. Went up there in the mountains. There wasn't even a board or a nail or anything up there. We had to build everything. We had to build a house, build a log house. Dad got a couple of old Finlanders that he knew down Peaceful Valley and hired them, and they were woodsmen. So they came up and picked out the trees, and we cut the logs and bring them down. Boy, what a deal that was there. This damn big house that we had there had just a roof on it. And if I live to be 100, I'll never ever forgive myself for taking my mother up to a place like that when she left a nice home on the ranch there. To take her up to a place that didn't even have room dividers in it, you might say. 1 by 12 board for floor. No ceiling in it. We built a fireplace big enough to put in a 4-foot cut of wood in there. And the kitchen range over there and the fireplace here's all there was to heat that place. It was situated in such a place that there was no wind coming there, couldn't. So all the snow that came straight down. Winter of 36 that we were there, the snow was measured over 6 foot deep. And that was the winter. It was cold. I mean, it was colder. We put up ice on the lake down there for these ice houses. It was 27 inches thick. And I used to haul hay from a farm that was at the other end of the lake. I'd load up the sled with hay, and I'd come down, hit the lake, and come across the ice around there. It would save me about 10 miles. But it was safe. 27 inches, you aren't going to go through that. But that was a tough winter, and just when we went up there, I had to get a team of logging horses because the horses we had weren't not of that caliber. And so we went out, and I found out Town Grants had a feedlot or livery stable on Sprague. He had this pair of blacks out there that took my eye, nice big black horses. And they'd come in off the Palouse farm down there. They'd just been working the string. They'd never been working as a team. So, gosh, they looked good to me. Good sized horses, there. Looked like they could do it. So I had them to hitch that team and harness that team up. In fact, I harnessed them up there and went out. And he had a great big 12 by 12 timber about 20 feet long. With a log chain around that, pair of doe trees on it, hitched that team and took that around. The reason I did that because there was a kind of a big bank there, and so I hooked this timber back about 8 far with my chain. So when horses came up over this bank, and this thing rammed into that bank there. I mean, it took some power to pull that through, and I could see the way they knuckled right down and hauled into there that they were going to be a good pulling team. So we bought that team. I think we paid $275 for that team, which is a lot of money in those days. And then I had to get a heavy harness, a logging, regular heavy duty logging type harness. I could get $40 for that. And I had a good skidding outfit then, because up there in the woods we had to cut the trees down, cut them up into logs, and skid the logs down to the landings where the trucks would come in, and then they'd have a jammer down there and have to load that up. Load the trucks up, and then they'd take off. Used to have to build roads up there. Wherever we went in the timber, we had to build the roads. We didn't have no caterpillars or bulldozer or anything. It's all done with brute strength and awkward. And no breaking plow that we'd start on the side hill, and throw a few furrows down there. And then had a scraper come along and scrape a little bit more. And when we got it fairly, so it wasn't so steep, we got a little grader to hook onto that and pull that and try to push this dirt out so we could build a road 10 feet wide at least so these trucks could get it. That was a hard go, I'm telling you. That logging, just a lot of brute strength and awkwardness into that, there. So we finished our contract, and I think we were there 34 through 38. And we came back to Spokane, and that 38 was the first time my mother had electricity or running water in the house. We found a house that we rented around here or something. Anyway, that's the way that story went. You see a lot of trophies sitting here. Well, this is one accomplishment kind of that I did in my life that I'm kind of proud of. I raised a little horse that absolutely looked like this. It's about as near a replica as you could ever get. It looked like that. Or she would quarter horse out of the King string down in Texas there, kind of a running quarter. And I raised this horse up there and trained her, ground trained her, everything. I used her in this drill as well as 3 other horses. But I had this all-women's drill team on horseback that I got involved with there, and we would I had a drill written up almost like square dance, but it was a hard red drill. I mean, these girls had to ride because they were threading the needle 4 abreast just as tight as those horses could go. And the reason I wanted it within that fashion, because we were wanting to go to rodeos, and rodeos is excitement, lots of everything excitement. So I wanted to have action there that people like when they come to rodeo, and we did. That's what we had. So we went to rodeos from here to the famous Olmec Stampede. We put on a drill up there. We drilled in the old Coliseum here when it was down here in Spokane. A lot of them in between. These are trophies that we got for parades there, for the best unit that was out there. I guess I'm a little partial to this one here. It says to Andy Anderson, best drill master ever, and grateful appreciation from the members of the Lilac City Patrol. I'm sure I wasn't deserving that, but they gave it to me, and I was glad to get it. In that time, we had 4 first place awards from the Lilac Parade, which is the great parade here in Spokane. Every year it's good. I feel that I had a pretty good part in updating the riding units. They had a fellow that was in charge of all the equestrian units down here. My idea was to have the best looking outfit you could. That means the horses were bathed and groomed and clipped before they ever went down there. The hoofs were painted. The girls had the purple and white outfits. They were dressed fit to kill. My little horse had a blanket like this here, purple and white, and a breast collar on it there. And I had 20 in the drill, and 25 or better in the parade all the time. And I can remember I think it was first year or second year, I had used it. I had Morgan there, really good mare, settled there, that I'd used, and she came up lame. I was grooming this one to take her place, and she was only a 3-year-old, barely green-broke. And so I was forced to put her in. One of her first rides was down here in the Lilac Parade. So we were on, I think it was Sprague Avenue, lined up there. I had 24 horses behind me, 25 with mine. And coming up this street were the bands and the marchers and what all, and they were all going, and these horses were all eyes, ears, and watching everything and behaving pretty good, And so, some reason, it stopped right up in front of us. A big band was there, and everything was kind of quiet. Good God, I'll tell you, somebody hit the whistle and the drums started and the horns started, and I had 25 horses immediately heading for Idaho. So we got them all stopped up there and brought back and got them all settled down again. Some dude rode up and asked me if I thought I could handle it. Young man, if I couldn't handle it, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. Everything's under control. I guess he read me out and understood what I was telling him, because he left right away. It was about 4 or 5 blocks down the road before this thing settled down and started to behave herself, She was almost like my stirrups were dragging part of the time. I don't know what she like. She's ready to spring at it. Anyway, these were fun deals. These parades that we went into, there's a constant worry. I damn near sweat blood on every time we went in there. I remember one time we was going through there. I look back now, the corner of my eye, I see one of those latches on the bridle that held the bit to the headstall had come loose on one horse, and the bit had dropped out of its mouth. Well, I don't know how it happened, but just like that, I was back there and had that horse corralled there before he even got out of line, and got that bridle fixed up. I think I tied it up with some rawhide there, but they had little screw type deals in there. I checked it before we started on the parade, and everything was all right, but for some reason that must have been holding just maybe a hair. It was down the line and it broke. So we didn't have any problem there. I got it handled before it was a problem. Going down the parade lines, you always had to watch out because kids were always running back and forth. People would keep cramming in closer. So you always had to be really careful all the time. And then there, of course, is these dudes on the sidelines that use pea shooters, to hit these horses. Every once in a while you see a horse jump, well, you know what happened. But it was fun. We had a good time. And all the rodeos that we went to, we enjoyed them. Had a lot of fun. We mostly camped right on the rodeo grounds. We had camper tents or whatever to get it to. So anyway, I took care of that. Might show you, I don't wear that hat all the time. When I'm out here and I get serious, I have to put this old hat on here. This is one of my working hats that I use when I get out there. That's kind of my best hat. I guess every old cowboy got 3 or 4 hats around there. Got this one that I've had for years. Fits pretty good. It feels good. I wear it a lot of the time there. And when the weather gets too damn hot out there, I kind of just goddamn go this old straw hat here. Put it on and get out there, and rides a whole lot better when you got something like this when it's 90 to 100 degrees. Anyway, I don't know, but what maybe I covered a good share of what you should know about me. I guess from here on out, anything that comes up, this kind of brings you up to through my younger days, my growing up time, a little bit into my older years. But I guess from here on out, it maybe be up to my kids, my son, or daughter, to update on this thing and see what's happening. Anyway, it's been a kind of a dream of mine to do this little documentary for you kids. Because I know I would like to have seen one on my grandfathers. Even on my dad, I would like to know a little bit more about him. I didn't even know anything about the cemetery deal, where one side of my grandparents, my dad's side, I really didn't know where they were buried. I thought it was Pleasant Prairie because that's the one that takes care of the prairie and the foothills, but I wasn't sure. I knew where my grandmother's parents are all buried out Trentwood Cemetery. Then my folks now are buried at Holy Cross. So I started looking into the deal on my grandparents on my dad's side. And so I went and I got to the secretary, and they got the books out, the maps. Sure enough, my grandfather had bought a lot there, graveside lot, had 8 spaces in it, which I got 3 left there. But I learned something when I was out there. My dad, there were 6 boys, good, big, strapping, healthy, 6-foot guys that all lived, got along fine. But there were 4 little girls that my dad told me none of the girls lived, but I didn't know anything else about them. But through my cemetery, I found out that 2 of those, I'm sure, died at birth because they didn't have even names. And the other 2, they're on the cemetery marker out there. One little girl lived, I think it was a year and a month or something, I can't remember. And the other one lived only 4 months. How come they could be such healthy boys and the little girls didn't make it? I do not know. I don't know the answer to that. I'll never know that. Plus, there's a son, brother to my dad that's buried out there that I never even knew about. My dad had never told me anything about. And his name is on the marker. So there's a lot of history stuff that I can't find it out. I tried to run it down. I didn't get very far on it. I got, learned quite a bit, but not all this stuff. So anyway, that's the way that part goes. So I had to dig out what little that I know about my dad's. I had to dig that out myself. I would like to know a lot more about both of them. I do know that when my mother was a little girl, lived on the prairie there on that homestead, that there was a trail not far from their house where the Coeur d'Alene Indian tribe through Beyond and up over to Wellpennant in the Colville Reservation. And my mother told me as a little girl that her and her 2 sisters would be out playing sometime, and they look up and see 3 or 4 Indian bucks going through there on their way, one way or the other, doing whatever Indians do. So that's back in the, in the days when the Indians were still roaming around. That was in the late 1800s, or very early 1900s. So I sometimes wish I would have been here a few years sooner, but I think I got the best of all worlds. I have to tell you, I feel I lived in the best times there was. I lived on my dad, I was born and raised on my granddad's homestead, which I think quite a bit of. Lived with the horse and buggies, traveled with the horse and buggies before my folks got a car. Went through that era with the cars. And on up through all the things that were built. I toyed the wash machine, the thrash machines, the pickup balers in the field, the tractors. We never had tractors. Everything was done with horses. Then the tractors come along, and the steam engines and the grain separators. Then the headers came along. Then the combines come along. From the ice box to the refrigerators to freezers, from radios went to televisions, and then of course the space thing. I've got to see the space thing up there. What all they've done there. Seen the pictures of the guy landing on the moon and walking around up there, and then coming back down to this earth. So I've seen a hell of a lot, I'll tell you, in my time, and I appreciate everything that I've seen, all the new things, the inventions, the modernization, the progress, I guess I would have to label it progress more than anything. Uh, I was in the automotive world and I've seen so many changes in the automobile since the first time they started. Even today, they're still making changes. They got fuel injections now. That's the latest thing that's out there. Then in the business world, they have computers that change absolutely from day to day. So I have absolutely seen a lot. I've enjoyed life a lot. I've done a lot of things. I kind of more or less done what I wanted to do within my power, my jurisdiction. So I really, don't have any complaints that I render. I appreciate God giving me up this time to live now. In a few months, I'm going to be 80 years old. That's fourscore. And, some aches and pains and hurts here and there, but not enough to shell me. Just the other day, plowing my driveway out here, and one of the neighbors, about 11, 12 inches of snow out there. As long as I can do these things and still get out and get in our little, Esther and I have a little mini home. We like to travel around a little bit, don't have to go too far. Been over to Yellowstone a few times, toured Yellowstone on the motorcycle, her and I. And just kind of enjoy doing those things, going up here to Sullivan and parking at the lake up there. I hope this year to be able to do a little bit more of that, because how much longer I'm going to be able to get out and do this. A while perhaps. We don't know. So I think with that, I'll sign off. Thank you for looking. If I've enlightened you in any way, I'll let you know what things were like back when I was a kid. That's the object of this. And I know I've got grandchildren. I've got at this point a couple of great-grandchildren, even some great-grandchildren by my kids is married. So I guess with that, I'll say thanks for listening and looking. Old Cowboy said, I'll see you somewhere down the road.